So welcome to our classes. We're happy to have you all here. So what are the similarities and what are the differences for Lightroom and Photoshop? They are both image editing programs that deserve a place in your workflow. So I'm going to show you, which one, but honestly, the bottom line at the end is going to be there's probably a place for both of them. They are part of the Adobe Photoshop plan, and they do help you realize your creative vision. So this mini course is going to introduce you to some of the strengths and weaknesses of each program. All right, so a little overview for Lightroom. Lightroom is an image management program for sorting and storing your images, as well as an editing program, light editing, okay? So, and it is database driven. So all of the things that you do in Lightroom are actually stored within Lightroom's database. One of the things that's nice about it, it makes it easy to sort and organize your image, process and develop RAW and JPEG files. So it depends on which you shoot. Processing both of those is great. Individually or in smaller, large batches. So you can do that work on a single image, or you can apply the same development to a whole group of images fairly quickly. One of the things that's nice about it, it is designed to help you work efficiently with large groups of images. So it does work on small or single images, but it really excels at helping you work with small or large groups of images. And there's quite a few fabulous features to assist you as a photographer. So here's pretty much the basic overview of the Lightroom library. And you have, let me do this. We're in the library module, so we have that, and you'll see this is pretty much the same layout throughout all of Lightroom. You have some organizational parts over here on the left side, okay? You have your images here in the center, okay? And you can have them, I have this one set up as the thumbnail view. You can also view the images, smaller thumbnails, larger thumbnails, or an individual image at a time. Down at the bottom, you have a film strip that's also showing all of the images. And you have, you can sort your images as well. I have this one set to sort as capture time, but you could sort it by file name and a variety of other types of sorts that happen right there on the bottom of that. Over on the right side, you have all of the information that is pretty much the metadata information. And I'll talk about that as we kind of move on a little bit more. But the first part up here, it shows you your histogram, which gives you some information about how you shot the image. Then you have a place for keywords. You can add keywords, and then your metadata, which is two types of metadata. One is the information that comes from your camera, and the other one is information that you can add to the images themselves, such as the keywords, captions, your contact information, and those items. Okay, and this is all happening here in the library. Oh, come on, mouse. There we go. Hello. There we go. Ah! Okay. All right, so hold on. Why? Clear. There we go. All right. So strengths in Lightroom: managing, organizing, cataloging, and sorting. You can and should use Lightroom to manage your image files. It's a great visual way. You can see them, you can move them around, you can creating and naming folders. You can do this from within Lightroom. You can move images from one place to another, all within Lightroom. I'm going to give you one caveat though, is some of you are probably used to moving images around on your hard drive and possibly renaming them there. Once you start using Lightroom, do all of that image management from within Lightroom. Do it from within there. Because if you do it in both places, Lightroom won't know what you did, and the images will be disconnected from the Lightroom catalog.
If you renamed, I know you can reconnect things, you know, if you accidentally move something, but what if you were to move something and rename it? Would it not be able to reconnect?
That's where it becomes really difficult. That's where you create, if you can, there is a way to find the stuff if you just move it, but if you
don't do it.
Yeah, just don't do it. Just once it's in Lightroom, just use Lightroom as your file manager for your images. It's the best thing to do. Keeping all of your photos cataloged in one place. So all of my photos are cataloged in one place. So I can go and find stuff from years back in this one catalog.
Are you, I mean, I know you back up your catalogs, I assume, many places, but it scares me to have everything in one master catalog. And doesn't that take a really long amount of time to launch if you've got like 100,000 pictures or 10,000 pictures or something?
I have more than 100,000 pictures in my catalog.
What?
I have more than 100,000 pictures in my catalog.
Just brought in a little bit at a time.
It's frightening.
But,
yeah.
But like, I mean, I did have a friend. Now, he probably didn't really back it up the way you're supposed to.
Yeah.
But his master catalog went on the fritz.
That's why you need to back it up, because it is a database and things can happen. So you do need, nothing will happen to your images. You will just lose, you will just
years of work.
Yeah, you'll lose your Lightroom, some of your Lightroom stuff. So it is a good idea to back it up. And yes, I do back it up.
So do you, so you don't do it yearly. Some people suggest having a catalog for every year.
Oh God, no. Okay, so here's my analogy. If you went to the library.
Okay, tagging.
Yeah, you want to go to the library. You want to find all the books in the library. You don't want to have to go to the library for nonfiction and then the library for reference materials and then the library for science books. You want them all in one place.
Is it okay to have, like, for me, since I do commercial photography, for those I make a catalog for each job?
That would be, no.
No.
I have a client catalog and I have a personal catalog.
Okay, so you have a total of 2.
Yeah. Fine art,
not fine art.
Yeah, and that's perfectly fine. So that way is fine. So let's move on here. So so in the catalog, I can import my images into, or import or add from the computer or from my camera media card. It can come in either way, and different things happen. For those of you who are not as familiar with it, we're going to actually do a class on each of these little mini topics as well. So right now, again, remember, it's this is kind of an overview. You can also tether your camera to the computer and your Lightroom catalog and import directly while you're shooting. I do that when I'm working in the studio. So if I'm in the studio, I'll attach my camera to my computer and it will come in straight that way. Okay. All right. Oh, hello. Well, I feel like my mouse, nope, there it is.
That must be so difficult to conduct a meeting or a class, a workshop, just on camera like this.
Mm.
Well, if my mouse was working, for some reason my mouse just stopped working. Give me a sec here.
So as mentioning what you said last, I would assume you could do the same thing with your iPhone or any, cell phone, right?
You would have to import them and save them to the computer in some way to bring them into this. I am talking right now about Lightroom Classic, which is the one on your computer. So Lightroom Mobile is slightly different. So yeah. So I mentioned the two types of metadata, and we have EXIF, EXIF, which is all your camera settings. That's embedded in any of your digital files. So you can go in and you can look up if you shot something with, one camera or a specific lens or at a specific ISO. It's all embedded in there, including if you've done this correctly, if you set the date in your camera, you can go and find images by date. So you want to make sure that your camera date setting is correct also. And then the IPTC data is the info you add. So there's two types of metadata that we mainly work with. And the IPTC is captions, keywords, contact, and even your copyright information. So Lightroom is great for helping you manage that.
If you ever buy a used camera, make sure, because I had a used camera for, I think, over a year, and I got a wrong photo credit on something in a magazine.
Because somebody else's name
whoever had the camera before.
Yeah. So all that metadata makes it easy for you to find things, and you can quickly and easily add keywords, captions, copyright, and then easily review it as well. So here's a couple things on, and this is just a cut in of that library screen where you can add and
stretch the upper back.
Yeah. Okay, so you have, once you start adding keywords, they become in a keyword list, and then you can just check them off and apply them to your images. And you could actually select a whole group of images and apply the same keyword to it very easily. So you could select some images and add one or more keywords to them. The other thing you can do is things like titles and captions, which is further down below the keyword list. So you can add titles and captions to things. And then you can also add your contact information as well as your copyright information onto your images as well. Very, very easily out of Lightroom, and apply it to a single image or an entire batch of images, making this very efficient.
Wow.
Okay. So, and that's why one of the things I truly love. The other thing you can do is create something like a copyright or a metadata preset. And that is over here again in your metadata area. And you would just, or in the menu, you just go to metadata, edit metadata preset, and you can add in your copyright information, and then you save it with a name, and you never have to retype all of this. You can just add it into your images as you import them, or even old images, you can go and select them and add all of your contact information to them, including your copyright information as well. And that's one of the key features of Lightroom, is the ability to create a whole variety of presets, which are essentially templates or saved kind of actions that you can apply to large groups of images, making your workflow a lot more efficient and fast. Setting it up takes a little bit of time, but But once you have some of them set up, it goes, it really does speed up your workflow as you're going along. Oh, hello. There we go. All right. Other strengths, organization, folders versus collections. So Lightroom has two ways of organizing things. Folders are where the images are stored on your hard drive. This is the place where raw images, JPEGs, Photoshop or TIFF files, that's where the real images are stored. No images are stored inside Lightroom. The folders are actually linked to the Lightroom database, and they can be on anywhere on your hard drives, and then they're linked into or added to Lightroom, and that's where the images are really stored.
They're just instructions.
Yeah, it's just kind of like this link out to where the real images live. And then within Lightroom, you can create these groupings that they call collections that you can organize, categorize, and manage images, where these are virtual groupings that it's a link to the image that's in the folder, okay? So the image stays in the folder. You create this gallery of images, and you can collect the same image into multiple collections, and you can collect images from lots of different folders into one collection or multiple collections. So, and then the fun thing about a smart collection is you can actually set specific guidelines and create a smart collection that Lightroom will actually look through your entire catalog and find the images that have that criteria. You want to know all the images that you shot at ISO 400. Well, it will find them all. Or all the images that have the keyword New York City. It will find. Pardon me?
You could do a collection of something tagged a certain word?
Yes, absolutely. From a camera, tagged a certain word on a keyword, ratings or colors, you can set that, setting a smart collection up to find images, as long as you've done that to them, will.
In the library, excuse me, in the library?
Yes, it's all in the library. So all the organization is in the library.
How would you select your whatever 10 images and then look for the tag?
No, it's like I'll let me back up just a minute. So, okay. Oh, 2. All right. Hopefully you can see this where the keywords are.
Mm-hmm.
I have 364 images with the keyword tag. There's a little arrow next to it. If I have that keyword on it, I click on that arrow, it will pull up all the images that I have still life as a keyword on.
So do that first, and then include all those images in a collection.
Yep.
Create a collection for all of those pictures.
You can totally do that. Or your still life images that have 1 star on them, however you want to do it. Okay. So, so here we go. Folders versus collections. So here are the folders. They're in the library on the left-hand side. So folders, these are all my hard drives. And then I have one folder that has all of my personal images in them. And then below the folders is collections, and they have just specific images in them that have been collected from a bunch of different folders. Okay. So it's a way of organizing, and the thing about collections that makes this very powerful is you don't have to have multiple copies of one image. It creates a virtual link to it. So you have one original, and you can put it in a whole bunch of different places in a whole bunch of different collections if you want, and you're not taking up more hard drive space. You only have the one original. So you only have the one original, but it might be in one collection. It could be in 100 collections, and it's still only that one original. So it doesn't take up a lot. It doesn't fill up your hard drive space. So that's one of the benefits to working this way. The other strength is development and editing. So it has a built-in RAW processor. So if you're shooting RAW files, you can develop your RAW files straight through Lightroom. Or if you're shooting JPEGs, you can process them as well. The RAW processor is the same one you find in Photoshop, which is Adobe Camera Raw. It's actually an easier interface. And then one of the things that is a good point and a bad point all at the same time is your adjustments normally through Lightroom are global, meaning they affect the whole image when you do something, or they affect that area of the whole image when you are doing something specific in the development. Okay.
Is the are there are many different kinds of raw processors? Because I've heard people say, oh, for Fuji, which I use recently,
yeah,
use something else, or different ones are better than others.
There's Adobe Camera Raw, there's Lightroom, there's Capture One.
But are the processors, you said the Adobe and Lightroom, that Lightroom uses the Adobe Raw processor.
Yeah.
But is that ideal for Fuji images?
I wouldn't see why not if you know how to manage them.
Yeah, they don't have a lot of, like, you know, in the develop module, like down towards the bottom with Canon, you can choose standard landscape. You can choose sort of a, you know, a color, not like a special effect, but for
a calibration.
Huh?
A calibration or a specific set.
Yeah, it's at the bottom, and you know, so it sort of knows where to put the blacks, I think. And there's none of that for Fuji.
Well, you know, you just may have to create your own, which is not difficult. So I'm going to do a develop thing on how to develop your stuff. We'll have a develop class, but it shouldn't really be that difficult to create your own, you know, shoot a gray card, shoot a color checker, you know, adjust your colors, and then apply it to your images. So the develop module, and I just kind of opened the basic one here where we have over on the right-hand side in your develop module, you have your basic adjustments. You have white balance, exposure, contrast. You can adjust highlights and shadows, add texture, clarity, and a variety of other things. It's a pretty logical workflow, and mostly it's recommended don't start here, but start at basic and work your way down through all of them, and you don't have to use all of them. So I normally use basic. I use the hue, saturation, and luminance. I use detail. And then I use sometimes lens correction, transform, and effects. I don't use tone curve very often, and I rarely use split toning. So if you have things that you're like, you know, why am I using that? If you don't need it, don't use it. Mainly where you're going to be is in that basic section to start with. You can apply some selective adjustments along with cropping, and that is right here. Near the top, there's a cropping tool, a spotting tool, and some selective adjustments. They're okay, but I'll crop in Lightroom. I'll do some very, very, very light spotting, and I'll maybe do some slight adjustments with the brush and the gradient tool. But they're for more selective adjusting. They're there. They do work very nicely. And sometimes it's all you need if you don't need a whole lot of extra retouching and a lot of selective adjustments. Okay.
When do you use, I mean, texture and dehaze and to a certain amount clarity sometimes seem a little bit similar. I know clarity is the pixel contrast or something like that, but I'm not exactly sure like when I would use texture versus that versus, I mean, dehaze is that's only landscape?
No, you can use it for everything. It just kind
So
of
when do you use, like a quick example of when you would use one over the other?
that would be for the development class.
Ah, okay.
So
Okay.
yeah, sorry, but yeah. So if I go into every one
It's
of
a
them,
bigger question.
yeah. So that we'll go into those more detail there. Right now, it's just just kind of a little overview here. Retouching. You can do some retouching. Okay, hold on. I got it clear. Okay. Learning things, clear, all drawings, yes. All right, so you can do some simple retouching in Lightroom, lightening and darkening and spotting images. It is, Lightroom, everything is non-destructive, and that means you're not really working on the original, you're working on a preview. All of your development is happening within Lightroom, and it's applied when you export the image out of Lightroom. There's no save in Lightroom. The database is automatically saving as you do stuff. But what happens is when you want to apply the development to an image in Lightroom, you have to export it. And when you export it, it takes the original, it takes your development settings, and it puts them together. And then you save it as a new image file of some sort. You save it as another JPEG, or it has a couple options at the end.
But it's always flattened. It's always flat.
Yeah, yeah. There's no layers involved in it. It's just, it creates the new image, but it never damages your original. So your original is left intact in that case. Okay. All right. So the nice thing about it, you can do batch processing. If you have a development setting that you like, you took one image out of a group that you've done, and you've done all of your development to it, you can save that setting as a preset. And you can save, these are all of the things that you would find in what you've done in your development, and you can choose which items you want to save, create a preset for it, and then you can easily apply it to other images that you've shot in those same conditions.
And where do you go first to create the preset? At the left or something?
Yeah, you go to your development side, you develop the image. Okay. And then you go to the left side. Yeah, oops, sorry. Okay. On the left side, under where it says presets, okay, and you click the little plus, it'll bring up this window, and it says, and then I named it. It's going to put it in the group called user presets. And then I choose which items here I want to save, and it creates a preset with it, and then I can apply it to a whole bunch more images.
So that's similar to the calibration, just a different way of doing it?
Not really. No, it's not. This is not a calibration. This is I could like, create a white balance preset, or exposure, or saturation, or whatever I wanted to do. It's not really it's not necessarily a calibration thing. It's all of your development settings, the development settings that you want to repeat on other images.
Okay.
Okay. So that's the great thing, and this is why it's really great for lots of images. It's really fabulous for doing a lot of images, because you can create this preset and then apply it to a whole batch of images. All right. So other strengths, and these are, I'm not going into these on this, but you can do slideshows. They're simple slideshows, one image at a time, that you can save as a PDF or as an MP4 file. So you can create slideshows, you can create books. And the books go through blurb, so it's got blurb layouts, and you can also create some web galleries as well.
That's neat.
And then other strengths are printing. I print almost everything out of Lightroom. It's very easy to print. You can do contact sheets, which is what this is, just kind of a clip of one. In the print module, again, on all your modules, start at the top and work your way down, okay? So in this one, I set the margins, what I wanted the margins on the page, and then I set the grid as to, I wanted 5 rows and 4 columns, and it'll create a contact sheet for me.
Can you put the file name in there?
Absolutely. There's a section, it's not on here, but slightly down below there, you can choose any metadata to add to that image.
So that's the module. It's covered by our pictures, but that's to the right. It's called print.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So right there. Oh, you can move your photos around where we are. Okay. You can do contact sheets, single images, borders, text. You can add watermarks on your prints. You can also create watermark presets that when you export files, it will actually add the watermark to the digital file. And then every module has presets. So once you get something you like, how it's laid out, you can save it as a preset. So all my portfolio prints, I've saved a preset for them. So the size is there, the paper, everything, which again is just a really awesome automated feature on there.
Wow.
Yeah. My mouse is making my life miserable.
That must take a lot of ramping up to do the printing, right?
Pardon me?
That must take a lot of ramping up to do the printing.
Not too bad. So other strengths in Lightroom: ease of use, logical process. It's generally easier once you understand a few key items. The one key item is in Lightroom. When you're in the library, making sure that you're using it as your image management and you don't move and rename files outside of Lightroom. You use Lightroom to do that. It does save all of your changes to the database as you do them, so there's no save or save as option. If you follow Lightroom, you know, from the top to the bottom in all of the modules, it's pretty logical to go through there. It keeps your images in a smaller file size since you're working with the raw files and developing them in Lightroom. It keeps the development as a small kilobyte file instead of, my example here is, if I take my 25 megabyte raw file, okay, in Lightroom, it has about a 5 kilobyte of development file. But if I open that, if I have to do something in Photoshop and I open it, when I now open the raw file, it's now going to be a 25 megabyte raw file is going to be 75 to 150 megabytes for one layer in Photoshop when I save it as a Photoshop or a TIFF file for every image that I have to process in Photoshop. So that's a lot of hard drive space. So definitely, helps you there. All right. So automation and sharing, again, you can create presets for almost every task, okay? And once they're created, it really makes your time very efficient and easily repeatable. Importing, exporting, developing, and printing. I have presets for all of those things. You can also share fairly easily, okay? Straight from Lightroom. I have a plugin for my website that I can upload straight to PhotoShelter from it. SmugMug, Zenfolio has plugins. So if you have those, there's a WordPress plugin. So there's a lot of plugins. You can upload to multiple websites. You can sync with an Adobe portfolio, and you can also upload to some social media platforms with just plugins, never having to leave Lightroom.
Judith, how do you upload one of those plugins?
I can do a class on adding the plugins in. Some of them are already in there, and you just have to click on it and then add your login information to it.
Okay.
But Dalen, I can, for anybody who needs any extra stuff on this, just send me an email or a message, and I can help you with some individual things.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. All right. So let's see. My Wacom tablet is working way better. Weaknesses. So there are weaknesses to Lightroom. Most of your development is global, meaning it applies to the whole image. Selective adjustments are possible, but they're not as finely tuned as Photoshop. Retouching, for a few spots, I'm okay with, but it's truly tedious and not as precise or as finely tuned. Less advanced editing and development tools. It's not layer-based, which layers allow more flexibility. Composites are not possible, and it's only designed for photos. You can't open PDFs or any other graphics in it, so it's only designed for photo files, okay? All right, so Photoshop. So moving on to Photoshop. It's an advanced photo editing program that gives you great control down to single pixels. It's better suited for very detailed and complicated editing. Okay, okay. Oh, come on, pumpkin. Come on, everybody go. Tommy, can you take them out? Sorry, my dogs were pesting. Like, please take us out. It's like, no, go away. Photoshop is great for retouching. This is where I go. If I only have a few spots, I can do them in Lightroom. But if I have stuff that's going to require more, I'm totally going over to Photoshop because I'm going to have way more control. If I need to composite images, meaning putting stuff in, taking them out, putting multiple images together, I can't do that in Lightroom. Special effects, things like filter effects, and then very selective and detailed adjustments. So if I want to selectively color adjust something, contrast adjust something, it's a whole lot easier on most parts. And again, I'm saying easier once you know how to do it over in Photoshop. Okay. All right. So things such as this. So on your workspace, so you have your image. It's a much bigger image than you have your tools. That's Rome.
Rome. Wow.
Rome. Yep. Tools. And then here is the layers and the different things that I've done on the image, from the background layer. And I blurred the background in here to give it a tilt shift lens effect. And I did all of that in Photoshop. And then this layer is a lightening layer or a dodging layer that I use to dodge and lighten up certain parts of the image. Okay. And because it's on layers, I can totally make adjustments to any of those layers. I can come back and refine them even more. Okay. Oops, went too far. Okay. All right, so let me clear my drawings. Okay, so retouching, removing blemishes, people, places, and things, getting rid of stray hair, minimizing or reducing lines, under eye bags. Okay. Just a lot of, hold on a minute. Yeah. They were quiet all day. Healing and clone tools. Liquify also to make the shape changes smaller and larger. Okay. So there's lots of extra retouching that you can do in Photoshop that you cannot do in Lightroom, such as this image. All right, can you guys see him? And I know you may need to move your people around if you have the video, everybody's pictures up. This image has been retouched. Anybody want to hazard a guess as to what's been done to him?
Facial retouch. Oh, maybe a new head? No.
Definitely under the eyes.
Yeah, lots of skin work.
Not really. No, he had really nice skin.
Really?
Yeah.
Like a baby.
he really did have nice skin. So I'm going to go to the next slide. So I have the comparisons.
His hands
All right.
look weird.
Okay. Okay. All right. So there's a little bit. So we have the left is straight out of camera, the raw file. Then my Lightroom developed file. So I did do a lot of the processing in Lightroom. And then I moved over to Photoshop. And his jacket probably needed the most work.
Wow, wow.
And he's more muscular.
Yeah. So you can, if you can see like right in here and right in here on his jacket,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
the wrinkles right here and the wrinkles right here.
Oh, sweet.
Okay. Even right here and here. Okay.
What about skin tone? The skin tone from the beginning to the third.
Well, this was pretty much correcting the color. And, you know, Beth, this is what you're asking. This was straight out of camera. This is once I applied all of my color corrections to, yeah, to the photo. So it happened over there. And then a little bit happened over in the Photoshop one. So, and then the other thing that I changed a little bit is the only face thing I did was right there where his angle on his face just kind of put his jaw jutting out a little bit. And I just kind of tucked it in a little bit. Okay. But those are all things that you can do in Photoshop that you can't do in Lightroom.
Is that an example of a liquefy thing?
Yes. Yeah. And it was like actually a pretty easy liquefy. Okay. Other things that you get to do, things like layers. So this was a paint with light image that was done on location. And each of these layers adds a new bit of light to this image. So base layer, and then each one of those adds some different lighting into each section of that train car was painted on a separate file and then added in that way. Okay. So here's kind of what the base file looked like. And again, this is the magic of layers, the base file, and then with all the layers on to light that up. Okay.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Other things you can do on layers, localized edits, making selective adjustments, dodging and burning, colors, hues, filters, and white balance. You can do quite a few things in it. So let me move along here. We got a few more slides to go. And okay, this one was one where a lot of these street lights were added in because the exposure for this was different than the exposure for this. Camera was on a tripod. It was all shot in the same place, and it was just composited together to build up this image. And you can see like all the layers over here. And then this was for the CBS Outdoor, and they wanted different options on the different LED screens that were coming. And that's what, you know, like this one is, and then that one, every one of these is now a different, yeah, billboard on that screen, but all on the same scene.
Wow.
Okay. So those are the things you can do in Photoshop. Okay. Oh, why does this not go away? So, and then you can see, you know, same, that was the base image. And then this was with all the different layers on building up the sky, building up the traffic, all of that kind of stuff happening in there.
And this is taking multiple shots, I assume, and changing the exposure and all that stuff like that?
Yeah, multiple shots from the same scene and then blending them together.
Oh, okay.
Yep. And here's another one, adjustment layers, raw out of camera. That's what it was. This was the Lightroom development. And then this was with the Photoshop retouching. If you can see, you know, taking down those highlights, okay? Taking down the top of the cheese got hot.
How did you retouch that?
That was like copying
what were some of the things you did?
Well, that one was like, actually, because if you just try to burn it down, hold on a minute, my internet just went unstable. Okay. If you just try to burn it down, it's just going to get gray. So I actually copied a bit of the orange, pasted it over it, and then blended it in.
Oh.
You can't do some of that in Lightroom. You have to definitely move over to Photoshop. So that's definitely where you want to go. Okay. So like on this one, if you see, like, here's an adjustment layer for darkening the cheese and then darkening the highlight on the spoon and the knife. That's what those are from. So layers make it possible, dodging and burning, color, contrast, lighten and darken. I can make it black and white and so much more. The other thing that I did on this one is the honey. The honey is 3 different layers. Okay. So because I liked part of it and then it dripped and I liked that drip and then it dripped too much. So it was like, so that was put together in 3 different pieces.
Wow. When you darken the knife, did you use a blending mode or did you just burn?
It's a level. Okay. So it's darkened with an adjustment layer. I never use the burn tool.
Right. But when you use the level, do you use it with like darken or like a certain adjustment, not normal?
That one was multiplied to darken it.
Okay.
Other things you can do, special effects, filters, blurs, artistic, perspective warps. So these were just a couple different wacky filters. Pixelate, so you can break it up. That's just a blur. So the one that I did, that tilt shift blur effect, I blurred some layers and blended them. This was an oil painting filter. Okay. And then this was a solarize. I wouldn't necessarily use these, but the filters kind of give you some interesting control over a bunch of different things. So strengths of Photoshop, other things are actions. You can create a step that just kind of records all the steps you've done. That's a little complicated, and I always have to look it up because I don't use it often. But you can create this process that if you're, you want to do that to a bunch of images, you create this action and then you apply it to a bunch of images. Okay. So, which is not, which does help you automate Photoshop. Okay. All right. Other strengths it has, bridge. Bridge is similar in a way to Lightroom. However, it you can I find it more tedious. It used to be the only thing they had, and then they built Lightroom, which Lightroom is way better for managing your images, but you can do it in Bridge. But Bridge is slower because Bridge is actually looking at all the real images, where Lightroom is looking at small previews of the images and going faster through it. Bridge, and the thing in Lightroom, I can look at all my images in the catalog. In Bridge, I have to look in every folder one by one to find something. So that gets kind of time consuming. Weaknesses, learning and destructive. It has a steep learning curve to master some of the tools, okay? You can accidentally save over the original. You can destroy pixels and degrade your image. So it's a mix of destructive and non-destructive editing because it does change pixels. And then every change you make in Photoshop permanently alters the original. To preserve the original, you most likely will have 3 files, one the original, one with your Photoshop layers, okay, and one that is a flat finished image that you've gotten rid of all of the layers on it. Okay.
Can you do just save as for all of those?
Yes, you would go to save as and, you know, like add version 1, version 2, version 3 at the end of the file, but yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Sure. Okay. All right, so moving along here. Other weaknesses, it's really mainly designed for individual images. It doesn't really do batches or groups very well. You have to use a separate raw processor first, which can be Adobe Camera Raw, and it's really not good for image management at all. As far as like organizing and sorting, it's definitely not good for that. Okay. So summary, which one is for you? Lightroom does organizing, manages a catalog of images to rate, sort, and group. RAW and JPEG processing, it's non-destructive. You can batch process. You can automate with presets. You can add and update metadata, okay? It's generally easy to use and pretty logical. Small file sizes, auto saves your work. You can share images easily. You can print, slideshows, books, and web galleries. Okay, Photoshop, why it's good. Detailed image processing, retouching. It's faster for retouching, detailed and controllable. You got layers, you can do composites, you got adjustment layers, layer masks that allow you to selectively apply stuff to something. There's a bunch of different filters and special effects. You can do perspective control. You can change image modes. You only have RGB in Lightroom. You can do actions, and you can have a little bit more print control.
But Lightroom is RGB, meaning if your image you mean either Adobe or sRGB, or is that something different?
It's just RGB. Any RGB is fine. Adobe sRGB or ProPhoto RGB, it works in all of those. But Photoshop will work in CMYK. So if I'm going to print for a magazine or a client, sometimes they want me to convert it. Okay.
But if you had something that was in ProPhoto,
yeah, you could open it in Lightroom.
But not CMYK. It would just
right. Okay. So which one is for you? Okay. All right. So they work together, and each has their strengths and weaknesses. For many of you, Lightroom will do almost everything you want. Honestly, I would say 90% of my images are only in Lightroom. They don't have to go to Photoshop at all. And it might even be a higher percentage. So if I need extensive retouching, compositing, then I'm definitely going to go to Photoshop with that image. But I'm going to do as much as I possibly can in Lightroom before I move on to Photoshop. And Photoshop's just a great complement and add-in for those advanced post-processing options when you need them. But it is going to require some additional learning. Okay. Adobe subscription, your Creative Cloud includes Lightroom and Photoshop, so both of them are included in there. It's $9.99 a month. Thank you all very much. It was great to see everybody.
Thank you. Nice meeting you.
Bye.
Okay, see ya.
Well.
Bye.